Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Mofe here again, and in today's video, I'm going to do a little bit of an editing tutorial. I'm going to be talking about frequency separation and how you can use that technique in retouching your images. So yeah, let's go. So basically, the entire essence of retouching is to smoothen out the skin and to remove the blemishes of the images to make your photos, or the model rather, because you mostly be doing this for human subjects. So the basics is just to get the skin looking smooth and as close to perfect as possible. And I say close to perfect intentionally, and I'll talk about that later in the video. Anyway, so the scientific reason why there are irregularities in skin is because of the way light falls on the surface of the skin. So because of the way it falls, there are going to be irregularities and sharp transitions between the shadows and the highlights. Highlights being the bright sides and shadows the darker areas. So in retouching, what you're trying to do is you're trying to ease out that transition to make things more level and smooth, so that the subject skin looks way smoother. So when light falls on the subject, the way light is hitting my face right now, you can see there are the highlights, there are the shadows on my face right now. And if I was going to retouch myself right now, I will try and touch areas of my face that the transitions here, and just make everything smoother and clean it up a bit. So basically that's what retouching is about, just removing the irregularities in the skin and then just smoothing out the skin to make it look very, I'm trying to not use the word smooth too much. Anyway, so that's the basics of retouching. Frequency separation is a way it's a very common technique. A lot of professionals use it, and the thing about frequency separation is that over the course of learning about frequency separation, I've noticed that there are, I'll say, three different methods of using frequency separation, but the best one, at least in my opinion, and the opinion of other um, skin retouchers and photographers that also use frequency separation, they also agree with me that the mixer brush tool should be the best way in carrying out frequency separation, because you have a lot of control. And if you check other YouTube videos, you'll see where they just take a particular section, they apply all the Gaussian blur, and then I used to do that for a time and that worked very well, but it didn't give me enough control. But with using the mixer brush tool, I can get the control that I need to make the skin look smooth, and I can shape it the way I want it to. There's also another technique. I don't know the name for it particularly, but it's kind of like dodging and burning. Dodging and burning meaning that you accentuate the highlights and reduce and then also accentuate the shadows. So dodging is to brighten up, burning is to darken. So dodging and burning is basically so this technique is kind of like dodging and burning, like the dodging and burning style of retouching, where you paint in, you fill in the shadows with brightness, and then you reduce the brightness by darkening. But this time you're going to use the particular colors of the subject. I'm just talking too much now, so let's just get into this. The mixer brush tool technique is what we're going to be using for retouching. So take it to my screen, and right here, this is the photo that I'm going to be working on today. It was taken by I think the name of the photographer was Mark Songs. He gave out these raw images so people can practice retouching. So I downloaded it, and I think I'll leave a link to his Instagram page on my bio. So the first thing you want to do is drag it to Photoshop, and when you want to retouch, make sure if as much as possible, make sure you are working with raw images, because they have more details in the picture. So this technique will still work on JPEG, I guess, but it has its limitations. You don't have the flexibility as much as you would like it to. So make sure it's in raw, and then I'll drag it to Photoshop, and the next thing I'll do is to duplicate it. So I'll just drag this put a new layer here, duplicate it, and then I'll call this. I have to make this tutorial fast because they'll be sitting like all day, and I don't want the, because if they take like again, it could be. So take the backup and I'll just put this in a folder, just call it backup, and just close that. I'm going to save this quickly. I'll just put it in my desktop. Yeah. And yeah, so I made a copy and I'm going to make this another copy, but I'm going to create it another technique. So another way to duplicate your layer is just hitting Ctrl J or Command J on the Mac. And then now we have two copies, right? So the first copy, we're going to call this tones. And the second, we're going to call it texture. So it behooves me to mention pictures are basically made of just tones and textures. Tones referring to the colors and textures referring to the, what's this word I'm looking for? I'll say the feel of, that's the way I see it. Textures kind of like the way the feel of the image. So images are just split into colors and textures, and then what's in frequency separation, I think that's what they call it, frequency separation. So the tones frequency is going to be separated from the texture frequency so that we can affect just the colors sometimes without affecting textures, and we can affect textures without affecting tones. Now I think the reason why this technique was created, try and follow me along as I'm doing this in my screen. I think the reason why this technique was created was because if you try using the you could try removing blemishes with the healing brush tool, the spot healing brush tool. When you do that, you tend to affect the textures. If you affect you affect the textures if you go overboard with it, and you affect the tones if you go along with it. If, like, okay, I'm just rambling right now. Take for example, I've cleaned this off, I've taken away the texture, that's where the blemish is. But if you really zoom in, you'll notice that it messes with the tones over here. They don't look concurrent, and the overall texture just looks weird. And so even though the spot healing brush and the healing brush tool can help you to some extent, that can mess up your image. So the best thing to do is just frequency separation. So now we have these two layers, textures and tones, and so we'll go to the tones layer, we'll go to filter, go to blur, and then we'll apply Gaussian blur. And so the trick here is to apply Gaussian blur to a limit where you no longer see textures in the skin, but please don't go overboard with it. One thing you can do is just take it down and then use your arrow keys and just increase it. As you can see, this is in this shows the live preview of the effects that you are adding on this image. So I'm going to increase this to where you can no longer see textures. And it's just colors that will be left, I think. This should be okay. Yeah, it's 14.5, it's not bad. It's okay. So we've applied the Gaussian blur to the tones layer. Just hit save. Then we'll go to textures, and then we'll go to image, apply image. We'll select the tones layer or whatever you name it. Just make sure it's the layer that's in tones where you have applied the Gaussian blur effect to, and then you remove, then you select subtract. So what this does is to subtract the tones from the original image. So if just quick math, if images are made of just textures and tones, removing the tones will leave you only with the textures. So this is just a command that removes the tones from the original image, leaving you with just the textures. And you have to make sure this is very compulsory. Your scale has to be at 2 and your offset has to be at 128. It's a must. You can't compromise that. 2, 128. I can't remember exactly why right now, but it's very compulsory. It's 128. So it's okay. And then you come over here to select linear light, and you can see that the image goes back to its original form. Just going to call that G. Let's call it FQ set. So if you see, I think I made a mistake here. Linear lights, yeah, not vivid, linear. So as you can see, this is our backup image and this is one we just applied those settings to. There doesn't seem to be any change because we've just split the image into two. So if you put the two back together, it's still going to be one image. So this is our frequency separation layer, and the thing about this technique is it tends to be very destructive, but there are ways to go around it so you won't be destructive. So you just go to duplicate this layer, Ctrl J, hold down the Alt key, and then go in between these two layers, and then clip it, create a clipping mask. Or another thing you can do is to right click, and then where is it? Normally you see, okay, just do this, right click and you see create clipping mask, yeah? And then go to texture layers, Ctrl J, and then you could also create another clipping mask with an Alt and click in between the two layers. And then instead of leaving it linear, I'm able to go to normal, and you see everything come back to normal. So you see everything still looks the same. So the reason why I'm duplicating this, because if you affect anything on the original textures and tone layer, and if you make a mistake, you'll have to delete everything and start over again. So by making these duplicate layers, you just have to just delete the duplicate layers if you make a mistake, and that makes your work so much less destructive. I'm going to be using my pen. That's what I use. I make use of a Huion drawing tablet. It's a small one, it's not that expensive, so I recommend you get one if you want to really get the best out of your retouching. But you can also do this with your mouse. It also works as well, but for me the drawing pen gives me better control. Alright, so the thing about retouching, you don't want to go too deep, because if you start retouching so close, you could think you're making make a lot of good progress in the micro, and when you go out to the macro, you see that it doesn't really fit in the entire general image. So try to give a reasonable distance, because this is how the viewers are going to see it, and then you're going to be editing like this. So I'm going to start with the tones layer, and I'll select my mixer brush tool, make sure I'm on the tones copy layer, and I'll select my mixer brush tool, and then I generally keep my load and mix at 50. They don't necessarily matter. What really matters is your flow, your wet, your clean brush after use, and then turning off this layer, whatever this is called. So make sure this is off. So make sure it's not selected. Make sure this is off. You should see it blank like this. Then select this. This cleans the brush after every stroke. So make sure that's selected. And then your wet is basically just turn this up. So I'm going to increase the size of my brush here, and take a look at this. This is 100% wet. You can see it. I'm actually finding it a little bit hard to distinguish between the wet and the flow, but I know the flow is basically the amount of intensity that each stroke is going to create, but the wet is kind of how wet the brush is per se. So I usually keep my wet somewhere between maybe 2 to 5. I don't go too overboard with it, because so just lose all the, just give it between 2 to 5, I guess, maybe 2 to 6. And then my flow is how intense the effect is going to be per stroke. So I'm just going to leave it somewhere between 2 to 5, maybe. just make sure your flow is very low. If you go overboard with this, you lose all the control, and you really want that control. So load makes 50-50, flow on 2, wet somewhere arranged between 2 to 5, flow also ranging from maybe 1 to 4, 1 to 5, and you're ready to go. My brush is a soft brush. I'm going to hit save before I start with this because something tells me that they're about to take lights. It's a thing we have to suffer in Nigeria. So tones copy, and then if you take a look at this image, you can see here are the highlights, and here are the shadows. So if you can see this transition, it's not really smooth. You can see it's still kind of sharp, also here as well, and here as well. You can see, especially here, it's very concentrated here, and then quickly it's dark here. So I'm going to make those areas softer. So just zoom out a bit, and I'm going to tones copy layer, select the mixer brush tool, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly draw, just paint over these areas here. The thing about this is you want to paint in the direction of the skin flow. So around the cheeks here, the skin flows like this from the eye, and then down like this. I want to keep it in that direction when I'm painting. And then just go in here a bit, and then I'll take my brush tool. See around this highlight here. Just softening those transitions, making the skin smoother. Also, you have to play with the brush size. Left square bracket to reduce the size, right square bracket to increase the size. So that's how you affect the size of your brush. So you make this smaller and then go to the nose here. Just keeping, you can see the skin flow moves in this direction. Then just smoothing these transitions from highlight to dark. Yeah. Alright, so let's also take a look at the chin here, over here. Let's paint over this. Yeah. Alright, so let's see what we've done so far. This is our before frequency separation. This is our after. As you can see, the skin looks way more smoother now. Those bars under the eyes have been reduced a bit, and the skin just looks way more smooth. I see the transition between highlights and shadows and dramatically be reduced. So you can still take your time. Please take your time on this technique. There's no rush here. Make sure you're getting every corner of the skin. Everything should look nice. Then I'm going to go to the lips over here, and I'm not going to go too deep into the lips because I need some space there. I'm going to clean this up a bit. And then just sweep back, and then make sure you don't get so carried away with the face that you forget other parts of the skin. So that's a mistake I usually made. I usually forget to work on other skin areas. So I'm just going to work over here. Reduce those transitions. Let's hit save. And I'm going to paint over here. Just take a look at the progress after. Wonderful. Over here, I'm not going to paint over the knuckles because I need those dimensions in the knuckles to really understand that. So I'm just going to walk around it a bit. So don't go too crazy there. I'm just going to paint over here a bit. So you can hold down space to pull out the hand tool so you can move around. Just paint here. So yeah, this is just a rough walk on how you walk in the tones layer. Let's zoom out and let's see our original image. This is our before, this is our after, before, after. The skin looks way more smoother now. So I just rushed through this, so I usually take my time and really do this. Also, I've done this image like 4 to 5 times. This has to be like the 6th time. You follow me on Instagram, you must be familiar with my rules in getting out this tutorial before. So textures, texture layer, how you work on texture layer to remove blemishes and wrinkles and things like that. What you simply do is, I think stamp tool, hit S to bring out the stamp tool. You hold down the alt key, and then you select an area close to the image that you want to clean up, so somewhere around here, and then I'm just going to paint over this area. So hit S here, paint over this area, hit S, paint over this area. Now if we zoom in, you can see those textures and tones as compared to when we did it with the healing brush tool. The textures and tones are still preserved in this technique compared to the other using the spot healing brush tool or the healing brush tool. So that's the beauty of frequency separation. So just hold on Alt, select here, clean on this place, yeah. Yeah, so that's basically how you work with the textures layer to remove blemishes in your skin. So basically that's how frequency separation works. You split your image between textures and tones, and it gives you the ability to affect the texture layer without tampering with the tones layer, and affect the tones layer without tampering with the texture layer. So something I would like to mention is when you're doing this technique, please take your time to make sure you go over every part of the skin. Make sure you get those blemishes and those tones. Make sure the transitions are smooth, really smoothing out the skin. If you make a mistake, also you can delete those those tones and texture copies and create new copies and just click them, and then you can just do that all over again. It's a little bit stressful, but it's better than just starting the process all over from the beginning again. And something I also want to mention, one thing I've noticed seeing other people's retouching techniques is that they seem to make the skin look too perfect, and the thing about that is, I mean, it shows how amazing you are as in doing the technique, but there's no realism to it. I know that's a word, but it doesn't look real. So I like to leave certain blemishes in the skin when, like, take for example in this image right here, she has a tiny say beauty mole or mark or something. I want to leave that there because to me personally, I feel like that gives it some personality, I guess. I don't know. And I'm not going to tamper with that one. I'm going to leave the way it is. I removed every other thing, but I'm going to leave that particular one. And then the skin, I'm not going to make it too smooth. That was one problem with that first technique of frequency separation I'm telling you about, where you just select an area and then keep applying the Gaussian blur tool and then cotton ball filter, and it just makes the skin get way too smooth and it doesn't look good to me. But with the mixer brush too, you have the ability to control how the effect is applied, and that makes everything better. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please hit the like button, leave a comment if there's something I missed and you want me to really expand it further. I'll be happy to get to it in comments. If there's a topic I want to talk about, if you find any problems with, I could talk about it in the next video if I know how to solve it. And also check out my Instagram at Bakery Imaginations. I really want to engage with you guys on that platform. I want to see what you're doing. Please tag me photos, ask me questions, go to my DM, send me questions. I'm always ready to answer you guys. So yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Not really next week, probably next time whenever I make another video.